balanced media representation, you really cannot overstate the importance of this topic. We had two experts talking about what lack of awareness leads to. Audiences not realizing that women are doing extremely well in great variety of roles, but once underrepresented in the media, you cannot see that. And as far as influence and impact goes, we've all seen how much political impact can be gained with similar types of bias if you happen to have bias in your media. And with that, let's talk about the language. We have Dorota Szabat representing PepsiCo and Joanna Gembal representing Accenture joining us. Hello, hello, can you hear us?
Hello, hello.
Yes, hello.
We want to talk about inclusive language, and traps of implementation is a very important topic again, because different attempts are being made to make institutional corporate language more inclusive for a variety of reasons. And let's really start with that very question. What does inclusive language mean for your organization? Whoever would like to start.
I would like to start. So, for a long time, I thought that inclusive language means using feminine and masculine form of words. But when I started implementation of various awareness sessions around this topic in Accenture, I realized how wrong I was. Okay, so two things. First of all, inclusive language is a part of inclusive communication, which also visualize the message. And the second thing is that inclusive language means effective language because this is oriented on the recipient. And here, the feminine and masculine form of words can be useful. And even better, when you try to speak or write in a way that doesn't indicate the gender. Just two examples of the communication which seems to be inclusive. When we are promoting the external event, for example, upskilling school, we are using the pictures presenting diverse group of people. There can be people, tall and short, maybe thin and fat, people wearing glasses, maybe someone using the wheelchair, and also people coming from various ethnical groups. It's simply, such communication says that I am created to everybody and I'm speaking to everyone. And what does it mean that that the language and the communication is oriented at recipient? Maybe the example from the business field. The communication and the language will be inclusive when the expert in some field will talk to non-experts in the way that they understand. So, for example, when the lawyer or the doctor is speaking to the people who are not experts in this field, using very sophisticated words, very complex words and terminology, it is not inclusive because
Sure.
this is understandable only for experts.
Joanna, so essentially what we're saying here is that it's even one of the most fundamental rules of public speaking is that you really need to understand your audience every time. And since in any institutions we are really dealing with multiple audiences, multiple backgrounds, and multiple expectations. So that's really the context here. Let me ask Dorota. Dorota, how about you? Are there any specific reasons? Because in both cases, in both of your organizations, you decided to do something about inclusive language, which means there must have been a reason or two to drive you in that direction. Tell us more.
To add what Asha already said, yes, in terms of having the effective communication, I would agree. This is very important. But for us as well, this inclusive language, it's not only about that part, but as well about building the environment when people can feel valued, respected. And because of that, they are really much more encouraged to share their opinion, perceptions, their knowledge. And that drives us really to really have very efficiently decision-making process and correct steps and really driving organization in
All right,
this
all right,
this
all right. So let me
focus.
push
Yes,
you a
so
little.
this was the reason. Yeah.
Let me push you a little. If we were to ask you specifically, what have you done
What
so
we
far?
have done. Yes, so we have done quite a lot. So I think that I will start with the global initiatives because they are very important and they are shaping a bit our environment, and then I will go to the local ones. So from the global perspectives, we try and we want to stay connected. That's why we have very nicely organized structure for diversity, equity, inclusion groups. We have connection across our locations as well with the Europe sector. And we try to drive those initiatives as well globally. So not everything is done only locally, but as well the globally. This is important. But from the local perspective, we are raising the awareness. This is for us the most important aspect to educate organization of why it is important, because not having explanation behind drives to the result that it's cascaded. Yes, so people are not feeling natural ambassadors of that change.
I'm sure we all
So
agree with that, but can you
yeah.
at least, for an audience who might not necessarily be an expert in the field, can we relate to at least one example of where
Yes.
something matters?
Yes, this is what I wanted to do. One of the samples, together with Diversity Hub, we've organized, for example, a language festival, and we've organized a couple of workshops to increase this importance of language, inclusive language. So first of all, we brought on the table information why it is important. Yes. Then we've organized sessions with recruiters that are very natural ambassadors on the market, and they are very first, colleagues connecting with potential candidates, potential colleagues at work. So they reviewed together the posts that they share, they review job advertisements, and as well how they are connecting with those candidates. So this is very valuable session for recruiters. We've organized meetings of how to run inclusive meetings, especially in this remote way of working when some of colleagues will not switch the cameras, yes? And this is very easy way to omit them and to not include them into the conversation because someone doesn't maybe necessarily by the assumption is into having this conversations. We've organized a couple of sessions in terms of unconscious biases, generation management as well, because we cannot talk only about the gender split, but as well generation diversity of talents. And that is something as well that we've organized this year to increase awareness of the fact that we have really, really talents across different generations, and we need to find inclusive way of communicating. Some of there is
Joanna,
plenty,
thank you.
plenty. Gosh.
Thank you very much, Dorota. Joanna, is there anything you would like to add by way of examples? Because, well, you being Accenture, I would imagine you're exposed to lots and lots of interesting examples, not only from your company, but more broadly. So what drove you to address this?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, the context of our organization. So just in Poland, can you imagine that over 30% of our employees out of more than 8,000 people working in Poland for Accenture are foreigners? They are coming from more than 100 nationalities, from various ethnic groups. So this is the context in which we need to speak to them and to communicate in the way that they feel the communication is directed to them. So we are, first of all, all communication we are doing is bilingual in Polish and English. When making the awareness sessions related to the language, we are doing this in parallel. So we are creating the sessions dedicated to inclusive English language and also inclusive Polish language, which is even more complex, as you can imagine.
Reputedly, yes.
Yeah, so sometimes during such workshop we have a lot of fun, trying to figure out these linguistic puzzles and trying to make some very complex statements which used very complex terminology in the message which would be understood by
Yeah.
7-year-old, child.
Joanna, speaking of challenges, I'm sure we will all agree that even without the inclusive layer, Polish is riddled with enough difficulties. for
Yeah, but
foreigners.
this is a great, exercise for brain, just, to make it more simple and understandable, for all genders, for all, ages, etc., etc. So
We
try
couldn't agree
this one.
more. We couldn't agree more. So let me
Yes,
get
and yeah, but
yes.
I want to add just 2 points.
Sure.
So, and another thing that we did, and it's very important, we did the audit of our communication that we use internally, and also the communication that we use in social media, and for example, on our job offers. So this is something, and we are organizing workshops dedicated to the teams which are mostly, engaged in communication with employees, like recruitment team or talent brand. And also, when speaking about other inclusion and diversity topics like LGBT plus or disabilities, we also add this aspect of inclusive language there.
All right. We have a question coming to you from Emily. An interesting one, by the way. Thoughts on DEI glossaries, directories with hundreds of words and a lot of jargon and buzzwords that become so quickly out of date? Are we really going to build engagement through sharing these? Surely it just adds to the feeling, I don't know what the right term is, which steers people to disengage. Comments?
Well, yes, this buzz, this
Do you have
jargon.
glossaries, by the way?
Yeah, I think there is something like this. I once saw it, but I think that today it is absolutely outdated, because I have the feeling that every month there are some new words or some new abbreviations coming. And sometimes I feel really lost. So what I recommend is, instead of using, all these abbreviations, is using the full name of something instead of saying ASL, for example, or ABD, etc., etc. Use the description, or at least use the full words to describe what you want to say.
Mhm.
Fair enough. The last question, because we have a minute and a half left, is risks and traps. What to avoid, what to steer clear of?
Maybe I can start, and Asha will add something from her end as well. Having in mind as well this limited time, I would say that the traps and risks, well, first of all, if we are implementing the diversity, inclusion communication, this is very important to organize some regulations, yes, because not having some clear rules, clear information, what is expected, what we are expecting, what can be accepted and not accepted by the organization, may lead to the very difficult situations. It's important to not assume, yes. And this will be very linked with what Asha already mentioned about this dictionary of words, yes? As we know, this language is a living tool, it's evolving. So we should not really assume that someone's intention when someone is communicating is correct or incorrect. And as you can see, I didn't even use black and white because that is already offensive, yes? So do not assume that communication and the words like family matters the same for everyone as well. But the trap that I see is mainly related to a lack of proper education in the organization. To that one day organization is, deciding that we are implementing communication, and you will not put an effort to explain why, what is the intention, why it's important. And it is important, and we have numbers, it was measured, yes. If we will look into the numbers, if we have inclusive communication and inclusive environment, we have 50% less likely people to leave, and more than 100% people that will likely recommend this organization as a great place to work, yes. So
And that's a
those,
great selling point for
yes,
inclusive communication. Absolutely. Joanna,
exactly.
a powerful closing sentence you might want to add. No pressure.
Okay, so it will be powerful, but I just want to give you 2 traps, and just remember not to make these mistakes. When you want to create inclusive language and message, please make sure you are consistent with the visualization that you do. When you want to address to the people regardless of age, for example, use on the pictures various people, not only the group of young people. Or remember that it is very easy to overdo and lose your common sense. So be careful not to make your inclusive language artificial one, and for example, by using the feminatives by force.
And we have a question from how? Wow. We actually have two questions, but let me just read it out and maybe you have a quick reference to that. Miguel is asking how to move from good intentions to getting it right, which I believe we have addressed at least partly. And Pablo is asking, what do you think is the biggest challenge for a team to start using inclusive language in daily activities? How to handle it being a team member when not the team leader?
Okay, maybe I will take the first one quickly. So how to
Very
make it from the
quickly.
good intentions to what is done. First of all, invite the external experts to make the audit, and they will be able to tell you what you are doing good and what should you, take the,
So
what kind of steps.
walk in the fog
recommendations.
is never a good idea when it comes to language, right? All right. All right. I think we're there. We need to stop at this point. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue along the lines of inclusive language in a moment, but for now, we are closing. Dorota Szabat, representing PepsiCo Senior HR Business Partner, and Joanna Gembal, Accenture Inclusion and Diversity Lead. See you in a moment.
Thank you.